Welcome to the third season of Heard Afros Audio Interview Series. My guest today is BeMo. What's going on, man?
What's happening, man? How you feeling?
I'm feeling good, brother. I'm so excited to talk to you today, get to learn more about you and the work that you've been doing. Leading up to the conference was my first introduction to you. Checked you out a bit digitally and was super impressed and really excited for you to be a part of the conference and contribute in the way that you did. And we'll definitely get into that. But this is all about you. All right. First up, man, I want to know what inspired you to create the new blueprint, Brain Trust, and how does it reflect your vision for advancing Black culture and liberation?
That's such a great question. And it's a good question because it takes us on a journey of how we got to this point right here. So I host another show that started in the pandemic called Wake and Bake with BeMo. It is a moment, like a Tom Joyner moment, like a Howard Stern moment, where we can talk unfiltered first thing in the morning about subjects that are pertaining to us, Black folks, from a very Black perspective. And what happens is enough people start to join on to the show that the solutions that we hypothesize while using cannabis start to become practical and people want to execute these solutions. So those shows in the pandemic turned into parlors, which are these conversation centric moments where we get together and we play like some historic Black games. Actually, over the summertime, we all learned how to play Bid Whist, which is probably the blackest game there is, blacker than space, but that's a whole nother conversation. So we got together, we started playing these games, and then we started presenting ideas and solutions to each other, which is cool, right? So we went from a podcast to an in-person activation. That's the normal thing. What then started to freak me out was at the time I was also using cultural analysis in the marketing DEI space, all the George Floyd promises and whatever. Everybody asked where those questions, where all that funding went. It went to people like me, people
Mhm.
who could research on behalf of YouTube or Target or even Shea Moisture because they white on now. People who could report from Blackness, who have studied Blackness beyond just like their individual experience, can come with the frameworks and the theories that come from Black intellectual thought, and then applying that to different marketing situations. So what happens is we got this morning show that's creating solutions, and then we started to get connected on a completely different vertical to different brands who actually want to provide these solutions. So then it mixed, and a group of individuals from the parlor actually got to implement some solutions onto like Google, YouTube, corporate client stuff, right? And that's when I say we became the brain trust because the work came before the infrastructure. I had no idea when I started Wake and Bake with BeMo that I eventually would get to a group of 6 people who would actually deliver corporate policy to a brand. One of my biggest accomplishments is we convinced YouTube that twerking is actually a cultural practice and not sexual explicitity, that they changed the policy. The reason why Glorilla can twerk on YouTube and her channel can still be monetized is some of the little work that we did, right?
Wow.
We also inspired the series where you'd be surprised how many people at YouTube don't watch YouTube. So, like, people on YouTube don't know about RDC World. They don't know about the black hair phenomenon, the natural hair phenomenon that happened on YouTube. So, we're teaching those things. And now we're implementing, now we're like the spooks at the door. Now we have all the cultural solutions and we have the brands who can provide the cultural like distribution of said solution. Let's put it together. Brain trust. Smart people come together, think about a solution about a thing, execute. I was inspired by like the NAACP. That's all they were. It was just like 6 people that was like, you know what, we got a problem. We
Hmm.
got a problem. Colored folks keep getting lynched. We can't vote. Somebody has to be an advocate. Who's going to put all these brains together to do it? I could have looked around and asked other people to do it, but why not just step up and go ahead and create what needs to be done to implement the solutions that we need to see?
Yes, sir. And I really appreciate the idea that it came from, right? This work that was your own inspiration, your own brainchild, and just your own source and form of expression into what it is today. It just reminds me that the world wants us to think of our heroes as somebody that aren't us. Like there's some
Mm-hmm.
supernatural beings, and that's deliberate, right? That's a very deliberate thing to make you feel they are somewhere up here when it's just a person like you or me who made a
Yeah.
choice and went for it. And that brings it back down to the level that we all have access to making a decision and a choice and executing it. And so that's what you did. And then you bringing other folks along with you to create something so meaningful and impactful. Super important, man. That story is something that creates possibility for so many.
Yeah, man. The every man of it is very plausible because, like, to your point, you think, especially in the social media age, you go to somebody's page, you see the 150,000, the millions followers or whatever, and you expect that those people should be the ones as leaders. But in actuality, it is people like us who are moving communities in real
Hmm.
life. There's one thing to have this digital presence. But to me, the thing that scared me is to watch that digital presence keep transforming, like on its own, like almost to the point where it's okay, now I don't, like, there are operations within the brain trust that I know what's going on, but I don't know what's going on. Some of these things are happening independent of me. And it's scary to see that just like the smallest bits of action of being the one to step up to volunteer or a big conversation, who's going to pay the venue rent? Like, I'll do it. If it results in this situation, fine.
Hmm.
We'll
Hmm.
find the money, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, word up, man. I love that. That's a great story. And right to Wake and Bake with BeMo, it analyzes patterns in Black culture. How do you decide which topics to explore and what impact do you hope these discussions have on your audience?
One rule for the morning show, and I feel like it follows the same rule of any morning show. I try to keep as much trauma away from the show as possible. And mind you, we started the show in the middle of the Summer of Reckoning. So,
Hmm.
how do you have a conversation about what's happening to our bodies, what's happening to our mindsets, how we're being racially profiled, and how we're being destroyed systemically? How do you have that conversation but still try to keep it positive for the morning? And sometimes it can feel a little dystopian, like that movie Don't Look Up. Oh, the world's ending, but we're still gonna laugh and have us a good time. But what I'm reminded of is that this is just one station. This is one product. This is one thought. And this is not the full magnitude of who I am and what I represent. This is a morning show so that we can get information out to people. And the way that we fuse positivity into it is to see if we can find solutions for the problems. If we were just on Tuesday and Thursdays, 8 to 9:30 every morning, just complaining about the things that were happening, I feel like we'd be burnt out much faster. Our community would be more prone to being traumatized and not really trying to pay attention what's going on to a morning show. Because when you think about just the classic setup of a morning show, you wake up, you need good vibes so you can go to work. I don't
Hmm.
want to wake up and see the first thing is, damn, another nigga got shot. Damn. How can we approach the solutions to that? I feel like is a more invigorating conversation. And so when we think about the curations of topic, me and the lady of the house, Imani, she is the producer for the show, often off camera, mostly off camera. When we think about the topics for the show, we're often thinking about how can we find moments that are happening in the culture now to have a larger conversation about how the culture needs to move forward. One of my favorite moments, I don't know if you remember this video, there was a black man and a black woman in the kitchen. My man was in front of the camera and it looked like he was doing something in the sink and he was very proud of himself. And then the girl comes in and she looks down at the sink. She's like, "Why is there soap in the chicken?" And "You told me to wash the chicken." I think that is such a beautiful moment which we can have a discussion about. Okay, men and women have different gender roles that we've been raised around. How do we address that now that we are coming back to a place of equity when the wage gap is falling and black women are catching up to where black men have been and will be? And then another conversation of, what if niggas is dumb? What are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to engage in revolutionary actions and move the culture forward if niggas is dumb? And there's so many things that you have to address when you're addressing stupidity. It's not just the individual's action. It's a whole system. It's a whole school to prison pipeline. It's a whole government banning books to empower ourselves. The same thing that you said a second ago. It is dismantling these things that we have to do in order to get to the question of why this boy got the dawn in the damn chicken. So many questions that we can, and just from that moment, it's like, how did we get to the, come on, man? And that's how we decipher and choose and curate our topics. We're trying to find those moments that kind of extrapolate larger moments. And in that same positivity vibe, we have our Paul Robeson Negroes of the Week, where we are looking for the loudest and the most dangerous Black person of that week to represent how we should be moving forward. All of these just positivity moments, man.
Yeah, man, that's great. And you will never run out of content with that strategy.
No, never.
Yeah, at all. So no, that's super important. And it is that thing where we can remain in the present moment, because there's plenty of stuff to talk about, things to deal with, and to examine and move forward right here and right now. We can talk about the past all day long. I've tired of all of it, of the past. I know it. I graduated with Africana studies, so I know what happened. We all know what
You
happened,
know.
but we got plenty of shit right here and right now to
Mm-hmm.
deal with and to examine and talk about that is relevant and necessary for us in today's age and the ones that are coming up behind us. So it is very important that we have a very distinct culture. It's an amalgamation of our traditions, our ancestors, the continent. But the Black culture is something very unique. I really hate the statement we are not all a monolith. It's no shit, Sherlock. We're all individuals, right? Like, of
Yeah.
course, we're not a monolith. We have similarities, we have commonalities. There are certain ways in which we were brought up and certain neighborhood experiences that a lot of us can relate to. But we
Mm-hmm.
all are still very much individuals. And to be able to bring people together and share our different experiences, there's no single story to get to that common ground. Man, that's everything.
Yeah, man. You're coming from the Africana Studies framework, so you already know. The reason why we call them new blueprints is because we have examined the past, we know what it is, and to a certain degree, as Lauren Hill said in an interview not too long ago, we know what the solutions are. Do we want to execute them?
That's
Do
it.
we actually want to implement those things?
Yeah.
With the show, I've often called ourselves the practical steps between the theory and the application of what is to be.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So your work spans from hosting live shows to producing festivals and intimate events. How do these experiences inform the way you build and nurture your community?
Oh, good question, man. Okay. I like to think small.
All right.
No, a lot of people like to think big, but I like to think small. So when I'm studying, I'm looking at Arsenio Hall right now. He's on a magazine cover over here. When I'm studying people I want to be most like, I'm realizing that they started small. And when it became something that was scaling beyond their community, that's when things started to become shaky. And so when we're doing the intimate shows, when we're doing the concerts, when we're hosting events, I like to keep things at an intimate level. My events cap around 50, 55 people. Not because we can't do more, it's just I think this a more impactful entertainment moment if there are fewer people in the room. I remember 2014, like 10 years ago, I went to see Kanye, and I'm sitting in the crowd, everybody's mosh pitting, and I have an attitude. I'm like, I don't want all these people around me. I just want me and Kanye. Talk to me. So I'm coming from the unplugged eras, right? I feel like those moments were so special, or even Maxwell's Urban Suite. Those moments were so special, and I don't see too many publishers or creators trying to replicate those type of situations, things where you can feel real vibrations, you can make real connections, you can learn about the people who are entertaining, you can learn about the artists that you're with. When I come from that mindset I have with the show, I want to know, even if it's foolish to think so, I want to know about each one of my audience members because we are a community. And when I see that community can turn all the way into a brain trust that actually is clearing real money with some brands, when I see that, it's like, okay, we should take seriously the curation of our audience. So if we're going to try to have a 50 to 60 person organization that's going to continue to scale and grow, depending on whatever accomplishment we're trying to get after, it's got to be real. We got to know each other. And even when I'm speaking on the show, I want to make it feel like I'm talking to you. I know your experience, I know your perspective, and I know how to address it without, again, touching on the trauma points that are of blackness, but also empowering you beyond just those trauma points of blackness. Just thinking about community curation is all the same. It's just on a digital platform or on radio airwaves or on a video or on a cassette or a VHS or whatever. I'm old anyway. It's all the same. We're all
Yeah.
just trying to build a community that we think is best for our message.
Yeah, you can tell when intentionality is the rule of engagement. It's all over it when we are very clear about those things. And no matter what the model looks like or the external noise is, there's no, thank you.
Right.
But this is going
Now,
to be what I intend.
I've been curious after the Zuckerberg announcement
Hmm.
because I heard a lot of things and I'm still trying to process what exactly we're supposed to do with that. It feels after hearing Zuckerberg talk, it felt like when Plessy v. Ferguson came out and it was like separate but equal, and some color folks was like, "Oh, that sounds great," and other color folks was like, "I don't know, some still feel a little weird about that." That's how I feel right now. But I've been wondering ever since he made the announcement and he basically admitted that political content has been deprioritized in an algorithm, and now they're going to somehow try to get around that. I wonder if we've been protected in a sense because we talk about these topics and because they are deprioritized to a larger audience. I wonder if that allows us to create these silos and more protection, because ever since he's made that announcement, I've been seeing more people creeping into what I'm talking about. I'm like, I've never seen your types before. I didn't mean to interview you, but what are your
No,
thoughts?
yeah, I'm right with you, man. I think that much like X, when Elon starts making wild ass tweets and you're thinking, are you telling me to leave the platform? Are you literally saying, whoever I can offend, I need you to exit stage left? And so now you can tell he's talking to the other guy about it wasn't just we're going to go away with the fact checking, but we're also going to reintroduce masculinity and the fact that men need to be men in this space. And I'm like, while you're sitting there looking like that, you're having this conversation, but okay, we'll move on because got it. I do think that there's so much opportunity in this. What we do at Afros Audio, and obviously what you do as well, is that my grandmother, who's 94, I did about 20 hours with her on audio. And she talks
Yeah,
about the community I grew up in and how before integration, they didn't think about what they couldn't do because they did it themselves. They
right.
built it themselves. They sold it themselves. They created it themselves. And then it wasn't until integration where it almost ceased and desist what we were doing for ourselves.
Mm,
And then we moved into where we can now go. And
right.
it was this big thing that came out 3 years ago that was meant to be comedic about we were so pressed to get into the restaurants to sit at the diner and the food was mid. I was like, what the fuck
Oh,
is
right,
this?
exactly.
Where these raisins come from? And so it's that thing. So I do think that the opportunity, and we know that we have a lot of socialized folks in our
Mhm.
constructed limited beliefs in our circles. And so not everybody can go, not everybody
Yeah,
wants to go. But those of us who get it and are aligned, come here, come over
yeah,
here. I got something for you. But
right.
if you're not, stay over there. I don't want no parts of you any damn way, right? So it is that sifting thing that I don't mind at all. And it's to your point about the audience size, because people, energies, right? The
Hmm.
energies who enter the space, that's super important. And so when people on the outside say this needs to be a bigger conference, this needs to be a bigger experience, I'm very clear that the community is what matters. And who's here is curated and it's
Yeah,
intentional.
yeah,
And so that's what we're seeing. The energies are going to find themselves going to where they get to be. And those that
exactly.
aren't, I'm cool with that.
You already know, right? When black folks start to feel the pressure of other people, we don't drop our blackness. We run to each other. More community within each other and try to find safety with people who are like us within our black experience. And I really feel like that's what's going to happen. We're talking about curated energies. Brother, when I came to the conference, the one session I was able to sit in, because we had to go to a memorial service after, but the one session I was able to sit in was the diasporic conversation. Man, how they spoke about diasporic podcasts and the audio experiences changed my perception on what we're actually doing here. So when I hear the Zimbabwean creator talk about, oh, in Zimbabwe, we're talking about Zimbabwean things. We're talking about the 27 languages that are in Zimbabwe. We're talking about the culture here. When I thought, oh, we're not all talking about Beyonce. We're not all talking about Cowboy Carter. Like, we're
Word
not all
up.
talking about Kamala Harris. No, we're all creating communities within each other. I'm not competing with every podcast listener. I'm not looking to make an audience with every podcast listener. I'm looking for my people. I'm gonna find
Mm-hmm.
you in the crowd and be like, just like you said, hey, come here. Don't stop listening to Joe. Come over
Yeah.
here. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's important, man. And you know, in 2019 when we had our first conference, I remember, and I don't know, I'm a wild boy. So sometimes I say some things that I don't quantify. And I brought up a few times about us being coined a peculiar people. Because what are y'all doing over there singing and laughing and finding joy in concentrated poverty areas? We done made it so your water's cold in the house and there's shit going on in the public housing building. And y'all found your way on the stoop and sitting there sharing food and finding joy. And what is that? What are y'all doing? Because we doing everything we can to fuck y'all up. And what we know how to do is be resourceful. We know what kinship is and what community looks like and what Afros and audio is. And just from hearing you, what I'm understanding about what you are creating is this opportunity, right? This opportunity for us to find each other, be seen and heard by one another. And that, in a lot of ways, gets to be enough, where we don't have to look so far outside of ourselves to find what we're looking for. And that's something that has been almost socialized out of us. Again, that integration piece really fucked the game up a lot for us
Yeah.
as communities. But we always find a way. We really do.
On the show list, you just made me think about SZA was on the Drew Barrymore show.
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking about Drew Barrymore, the song, but also how much Drew Barrymore inspired her. And the way she was talking about her, it just reminded me, it was like, oh, yeah, when we were kids, the people I could identify with at best were like animated lions, Skeeter from Doug, the one token kid from the show. I remember when, what was my man's name? Oh, he passed away. Disney dude, Jet Jackson, that was his name.
Judge,
But Jet
okay.
Jackson reminded me, like, yeah, a lot of the people that I used to have to identify myself with were not black. It's one of the dudes from NSYNC, or it's Shia LaBeouf from Even Stevens, although not he now canceled, or like James Bond or Superman, one of these
Mm-hmm.
individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're coming into a situation where the next generation don't have to look to Drew Barrymore. They can look, oh, if I want to be weird, I can be like SZA.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's definitely coming to this. I want to call it a full circle moment. But again, if you think about the Harlem Renaissance and you think about those type of movements, it's always been there. And so I think of us being very strategic even in our conversations. There's
yeah,
strategy involved there about our way forward and how we get to move differently and rise above, as we always have, our current circumstances and conditions. So the work is important. And as long as we recognize that, how important the work is, then we're going to be all right.
yeah.
So let's get back to the question, man. I love this conversation. So you described your role as providing space within your network. What does that mean to you? And why is it so important in fostering community traditions like safety, mentorship, and apprenticeship?
I have found in my entrepreneurial career that, and it's probably obvious, especially people who do like real estate, but space is so important. When I first started, I was doing more like live music shows. And it became, I was trying to do them in DC on Black Broadway on U Street. There was like a small time where there wasn't a lot of live music that was happening in the corridor. So I was literally going door to door. I had a, don't laugh, I had a cassette player. And I had a tape of all my recorded performances that I had done on live shows. And I was literally going door to door on U Street talking to general managers and different curators of the show to see if we can get these people into the door. And as with any cold call, you get about 10% engagement. So I hit 100 venues. I got to do two. And what became very clear to me, I was at this place called Capo Deli. They have a speakeasy in the back. I wanted to do this very Mo Better blues speakeasy type situation where we had a comedian come in. We had this high level jazz, high level R&B music come in. One of my first artists was actually Alice Vaughn. She came through, did a Halloween set for us in the Betty Boop outfit. It was just a beautiful cocktail attire. Colored folks was looking beautiful. Very 1922. So I did a contract for 4 shows. I finished the third show, and the manager called me and was like, hey, I don't know if this is really working out. We're going to go ahead and let you go. And I was like, okay, cool. Things don't work out, whatever. Turns out what would have been my fourth show was going to be now So Far Sounds, which means where the Capo had to pay me a certain percentage of bar sales, and we had to go into negotiations, and we had to do all the legwork of marketing and partnering together to put together this event that sold out like 125, 150 people. Now there's another organization that's going to come in and do it for free. They're going to bring in more white people. They'll have people sitting on the floor. It's not going to take any marketing thing, nothing at all. And so it became very aware to me that unless I'm able to actually control and hold my own space, I'll never be able to do the innovative programming that I think my community wants.
Hmm.
Because what the general public thinks is we want to sit on the floor, we want DJ sets, we want fast, quick club experiences. And from what I'm seeing in my community, that's not what we want. We want small, intimate moments. We want live music. We want to really be able to touch each other in a real way. So it became very aware to me, unless I'm able to actually control space, I'm really going to be playing other people's games. And I'm already
Hmm.
an entrepreneur, so I don't like people telling me what to do. That's why I don't have a job. I don't want nobody telling me what to do.
Word
Uh,
up.
so then I just back on the path again, looking for venues that I could have a bigger space in. And I found who I think is my godsend, my guardian angel. His name is Jamin Johnson. I don't know if you remember cousin Jeff Johnson from BET, but his older brother has a venue space here in DC. It was called the
Nice.
Smallwood Box. And so I was at this conference, the DC Music Summit. Shout out to my girl Ashley Dior Brown. I was at this conference and he was speaking on this panel about event space. And I asked this question and I was like, are there any event spaces that are willing to like let me come in as minority partner and just program the shit out this motherfucker? And then we just see what we got. And this man was on this panel and all he said was, yeah, I got you.
Hmm.
Black man, yeah, I got you. And it turns out, matter of fact, when we went to Namek, I can't remember the exact name of the thing. When we went to Namek, in on the second floor of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, there is a corner that are dedicated to DIY spaces within black communities. Ever since the black church was in the woods, niggas is gonna find a way to hold space for each other so that we can do whatever the fuck we want to do.
Word up.
So I'm hooked up with Jamin for the last 3 years. I had a Wake and Bake festival where we had people come in at 7 o'clock in the morning doing sunrise yogas all the way to noon. We doing rolling contests and we got musical performances. I've had music videos. I've had concerts. This is where the new Blueprint Brain Trust and the parlors are actually born in this physical space. So I was able to get that. And then also just being a good black person, when somebody opens the door, you got to open the window and let the other people in.
Hmm.
So then I
Hmm.
started
Hmm.
doing different fellowship. Come on in, do your whole 6 hour event, 250. And if you don't raise 250, hell, I'll help you. Like if you don't make it, we'll find a way because I feel it is far more important for you to be activating this space and activating your brand and doing whatever the fuck you want to do. It's far more important than a little $125. Because
Word
I'm gonna
up.
make, because I'm gonna set up a bar in the back and we gonna make that 125. The people gonna come in here and drink this Hennessy for $7 a cup. We gonna make this 125. It's not a problem. So when you ask me the question like, why is it so important for me to hold space and create space for people? It goes back to a word you said a second ago. It's like apprenticeship. It's like the principle that Issa Rae said. It's like, I'm not looking to network up. I'm looking to bring everybody across me on a very lateral playing field. So when I have geniuses in my network and in my community who can host their own artist gallery, they can host their own adult activities, they can host whatever they want to do, their own paint and sips, whatever ideas that come to their mind that are not laden with the responsibility of the majority gaze, of the white gaze, of the gaze of let's be capitalistically successful first. If I have
Hmm.
all these people that can just cultivate that talent, just imagine what happens. So the small wooden box closed because of some government regulation bullshit. So imagine what happens when we build our own studio. And
Yep.
I keep getting tastes, right? I had a pop-up studio in the summertime. We were there for 45 days. We created 48 pieces of content.
Wow.
48-hour episodes of content in 45 days. One of them included a conversation with my father
Mm.
about his fatherhood and his misgivings, his shortcomings. And I'm just like, we're able to do this with just a little bit of time. So now when we're going forward and we have another studio partnership that's going to allow us to operate for a whole year, my goodness, man, we might have a whole BET by the time we're done with this.
Right on. No, man, I love that.
But it's so obvious to me, especially so when you become an entrepreneur, and I'm pretty sure you had this moment. There's a moment like after you don't have a job, it's been a few months, and you looking at the next rent and you wondering like how I'm gonna do this, but then your mindset just shifts and you like, wait, I have the resources to do. I just need to tap into them strategically. This is not a scarcity conversation. This is an abundance conversation. We have
Yeah,
space.
yeah,
Somebody's got to go find it. Let's go find it. People out
yeah.
here mining bitcoins. I'm not even sure if bitcoins are real. That's another conversation. People are mining
Yeah.
bitcoins from nothing. We can find a house, my nigga. We can do something.
Hell yeah. You make such a great point. And this is my philosophy, man. We have what we need. We
Yeah.
have the resources. We just put the resources where they go that make sense for us. We just giving those resources out. Like we know what our circulation is for our communities. And so once we start to recognize, again, we got the game fucked up because socialized beliefs, constructs, got it. But at a certain point, we got to get back to a space where we recognize that the genius is here, the innovation is here, the resources are even here, but we spread them thin when we
Yeah.
don't focus up on the opportunities that we have. We don't have to look outside of ourselves, and we can build our own tables while simultaneously sitting at existing ones. That's the thing. We can do that. We got to be real intentional about building our own tables and not just one, multiple ones, and everything that goes around it and on top of it. We got it
Right.
all. We
Right.
already got it. So you talking about my old stomping grounds. I lived on T Street. U Street is my
You lived on
jam.
T Street?
Yes, sir.
Yo. So I lived on R Street. Bro, hold on,
Okay.
hold on, hold on.
All right.
Let
So
me
you
back
know
up.
Metropolitan Baptist Church
Yes,
on
I do.
12. Yes, that was my home church when I was a Christian and lived in DC. So yes, sir.
What? The first day me and my roommate moved in to R Street, I shit you not. We were moving, we were sitting in my very old Camry, and we were about to get the stuff out of my trunk, and all of a sudden it's just like a random shootout between these dudes
Yeah,
on.
I've
And
ducked
then when
several
we learned,
times.
huh? Oh yeah,
I've had to
great
duck
time.
several times on R Street. Yes, sir.
So I didn't. So what the brothers told me on the block was like, "Oh, we got beef with the T Street niggas," and I was like, "Really?" So me and you supposed to
Yeah.
have beef. That's what I'm trying to.
Oh,
R
wait.
Street, what's up?
We know better than beef over turf that ain't ours. So we good.
Man, man,
We know better. So yeah, man, I love DC, man.
yeah.
And to be able to create Chocolate City, man, to be able to create things and bring it back. Because we know what it looks like. It looks much like Harlem. You know what I'm saying? So now it's changed quite a bit, but it's folks like you and businesses that are Black owned and for the culture and the artistic aspect of who we are that keeps it feeling like what we know DC to be. And I just want you to just keep going. And I know I don't have to say that because you are, but it's so important. It really is. Man, I
You didn't
appreciate you for that.
didn't have to say it, but I definitely needed to hear it.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. For sure. Your advice is to embrace failure and be correctable. Now, that's the thing. As a life coach, is like
yeah,
you got to be coachable if you want to coach, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
be correctable. And can you share an example of a failure that became a valuable lesson in your podcasting or community building journey?
Oh, I will tell you a very vulnerable story that just happened at the end of last year. So, uh, me and my lady are having a conversation, starting to get a little tense, starting to lean into disagreement and fight area. And it's about 3 o'clock in the morning as you have these conversations because that's what you do. And we're going back and forth. I'm not going to say explicitly what we're talking about. We're going back and forth. And my lady says something to me. She says, I don't really know what you want. And in the argument, you don't want to be wrong in the argument. When she said that, I was like, have I not made it plain over these last 7 years? Have I not made it plain what my desires are? And upon reflection, the answer was no. I think in my imagination, like it's so clear. And so when she says that to me, and I'm just like, oh, I guess I have never said to anybody, I need one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. So put that on pause. I have recently come into contact with a rich white man. And I imagine this thing happens to us from time to time. So this rich white man walks up to me. He's very interested in the platform. He's giving me the vibe that I can have the beginnings of trust for him. And so I'm talking about the closing of the small wooden box and how we need space. Just doing that on my social media. And he says to me, text me, call me, yo, we have to get you a fundraiser. Now, we gonna have one of those real traditional white fundraisers where I have all these people coming to my $3 million house and we'll just walk around and people write you a check, et cetera, et cetera. And he asked me, do you have a business plan? And I was like, what? He was like, a business plan. And I was like, what do you mean? He sent me this thing from SBA, it's like this actual document of things that should be in the business plan, et cetera. And I was like, now I have pitches, I have plans of business, I have campaigns that I've executed, I put them in decks, I put them in docs, but never thought to take the whole business, again, to the point of what my lady said, put the whole business into a document and explicitly say who we are and what we need. And so, in my philosophy of embracing failure, I believe that when people come to these moments when they realize that they are wrong or they have come up short, they try to more appease themselves and try to make themselves feel better about being short or being objectively wrong or even failing within a particular situation. But what I've learned to do is you have to embrace that you were wrong. That's the only way that you can really come out with a better solution, is to realize that what you were doing before wasn't good enough. Or you know what I'm saying? In sports, there are no moral victories. There's no moral victories in business. Either you got it done or you didn't get it done. And so, what are we doing to actually explicitly say what we need? And so now there
Mm-hmm.
has been an adjustment. There has been a business plan that has been implemented and executed. There are conversations that are happening. And what happens is when you readjust what you thought was going to bring you success to a more formalized system that's more aligned with what people want to see from success, you meet success. You have to be able to adjust. You have to be able
Mm-hmm.
to accept the fact that you were wrong.
Yeah.
And we do that
Yeah.
on the show. That's my favorite part of Wake and Bake with BeMo. One of my Paul Robeson Negroes of the Week was Diddy. When he was giving out publishing, it was Diddy. And in 2 weeks, we find out, okay, this is why he was giving out publishing. Maybe I should retract him from being the Paul Robeson Negro of the Week. And we should
Mm-hmm.
investigate more into who these people are and the intentions of people before we just jump in to celebrate them. I feel like Gen X could have learned that about R. Kelly, but they didn't.
No, we don't learn, but then we do learn, right? The only way to get through life is experience and experiment. You don't know what you don't know until you
Right.
know it. That is always the opportunity. And to your point, a clear request more often than not will get you a clear result. You experiment, you experience, you get clearer and clearer. And even that changes. We're always in that process of becoming and learning and understanding what's going on. Adjust and adapt is what we know how to do as human beings. Some of us learn it fast, some of us learn it slow, but you get there. And so I commend you for having the awareness, because we know
Mm-hmm.
so many people that lack awareness and never get there, even when the writing is on the wall. So the fact that you are willing to do what needed to be done, to adjust and adapt and iterate and get better and better year after year, because I think you told me that this is your 8th year in
Yeah.
podcasting. So congratulations on that. Yeah, it's a big deal and it's major, man, to stay in the game and to have a belief in self, because that's a lot of things that is an impediment for us, is that belief in self, the belief in what we have to say and what we get to be up to. So I just want to take a moment and say congratulations for moving it forward. And not only that, allowing for the expansion and what you've
Yeah.
done.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no doubt, man, no doubt. So what's been the most surprising or fulfilling moment in your time?
The community transformed into this whole like self-contained different, like practically an agency. That surprised me.
What's been the most
I
fulfilling?
also I would say the most fulfilling moment so far has been our partnership with the Washington Informer. The Washington Informer is a legacy newspaper here in Washington D.C. They do have their own city paper edition, which is supposed to be more youth impactful, but it also bridges back up to the Washington Informer. When we started this on a phone in the pandemic, I didn't think that a legacy journalistic newspaper would be interested in partnering with us to execute several goals throughout the year and to be a part of this generational family. That to me is one of the most fulfilling, because the audiences are very fulfilling and the things that we do with our community is very fulfilling. But to have that support from this legacy newspaper put that stamp on you of forever you're good, like you're part of this print tradition that's older than you, that's been around longer than you, that's a more rigid perspective, and they still allow somebody who is cannabis positive, very explicit, who is wrong from time to time, to still represent them as an editorial voice. That's so cool.
Dope, man. Congratulations on that partnership. One last question before I tell people how to find you and all the ways that they can get involved in your own movement. There's folks out here who want to start, who look at you, and I've had some of these ideas and desires for my life. They're aspiring podcasters, they're aspiring community builders. What are the key steps to creating a space that feels safe and empowering?
So when we were primarily on Instagram, you can see everybody's who comes in. I have a very sing-songy way of talking, and I like to sing and break out in the song on the show. As people come in, there's like a different jingle for your name as you come in. So if you come in enough, you'll start to experience like, oh, BeMo says my name in a particular way. Aquila. Like some people have a particular name. So when you walk in, like Cheers, everybody knows your name and you got your own jingle, you feel safe in the space. And those are the small things. Like those are, to the point you made earlier, those are the intentional things that you're not really paying attention to, but you are paying attention to. Those are intentional things that build that type of safety and community, that sense of belonging that you want to be there. Before the 8 years of podcasting, I was coming from a nonprofit, like after school education world. And there's a framework that we had to learn when we were at the Boys and Girls Club. And it was like 5 things that led to a fully fulfilled adult. But in actuality, these are the 5 things that actually create community. Safety is one of them. Fun is another one of those things. A sense of belonging is another one of those things. And then there's also like rewards. It's going to sound crazy, but you have to reward your audience for being your audience. There has to be like some type of exchange where they feel the benefit of being an audience member. And that's what we get to do like our in real life events. That's when we get to have like real cool moments like the Wake and Bake Fest or even the Paul Robeson Negro of the Year Awards, where we get to come together and have these silly fun moments. But in these moments, I'm literally giving out like superlatives. I'm like, who's been the most supportive? Who talks too much in the comments? Who never talks in the comments? These are the type of things that you have to create systems for your audience to feel a part of a safe environment. I think the no trauma rule works out in our favor because you're never gonna go on the Wake and Bake with BeMo and you're gonna see like we didn't even play the slap. We didn't even play Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. Never played the video. We talked about it. We talked about how masculinity should present itself when we're protecting Black women, but it didn't feel like it would be necessary to show any type of violence on the show. So you're never gonna wake up and be like, oh man, I hope they're not showing like somebody getting shot or they are going to go into a deep conversation about police brutality. I'm just really trying to get my day started. We try to stick to the things that try to make positive or even create solutions to we feel better. That doesn't mean that we don't get sad. One of the episodes that we had was we talking about John Lewis, and all of a sudden I just found myself in tears just thinking about how John Lewis got his ass whooped. It's like, okay, what a beautiful story. So we are still talking about real things. We're still going to be honest and sincere and authentic. But I think the thing that creates safety the most is I know your name. You're a part of a community. There are rewards. There's a sense of belonging here. And we have purpose. We're doing something. We're not just here. Not to shade any other program, but do you ever listen to morning radio? I can barely listen to morning radio.
I hate
what are we
morning radio.
doing here?
I don't listen to the radio.
We had that opportunity to talk to that many people. We're going to do something. And that's why actually I appreciated Tom Joyner, right? Because the Tom Joyner, you might cry listening to a certain segment. You definitely going to laugh listening to J. Anthony Brown. There's going to be the concert cruise that's going to be your reward for being a listener of Tom Joyner. And we're also going to give to United Negro College Fund because we got to get these Black folks into school. It is all of these things that we have to do in order to make sure that our communities are actually communities of like impact. And now I just leave this with you because it gets real heady, it gets real deep. I was reading this book by Clyde Taylor, and he's talking about the development of artistic aesthetics. Apparently, there's a whole branch of philosophy called aesthetics, right? How do we assign value to the things that we see and participate in the world? What Clyde Taylor has this theory. He says that folks who are marginalized, folks who have been decentralized or even disenfranchised from a certain community do not have the luxury to separate form from function when it comes to art. Or as W.E.B. Du Bois says, don't give me art unless it's propaganda. Everything that we do must go back towards our own liberation. So it would be disingenuous to say I'm having a Black morning show and we had no purpose. We had no function. We were all just form. It's got to be both. This is a
Hmm.
conversation that answers the question, how does this free us? That's what we're doing
Yes.
over.
All right. I love it. Nina Simone said it's the artist's duty, right? To
That's
reflect the
right.
times. And that's our work. And that to me is a joyful experience to have a point. I say sometimes, fuck your purpose. What's your point? What's the point of what you're doing?
Mhm.
And as long as you have a point, you gravy. And so I really appreciate that about what you're doing, what the brain trust represents, but not only what it represents, what it's actively doing for the world. Because anything that we do, we're carving out a space of this world for ourselves and moving it forward. All we can do is have our footprints. And so what you're doing, the work that you're doing, and very intentionally, I really respect it and I appreciate it, man. And with that said, let people know how they can get involved, how they can experience you and your community and be a part of these things.
Yeah, man. As the modern folks do, you can find me on all social media platforms at BeMo Brown, BEMO Brown, especially on Instagram. That's where we announce a lot of the cultural happenings that are right now. But if you go to Substack, BeMoBrown.substack.com, and sign up for the New Blueprint newsletter, you'll get more in depth instructions on how you can actually be involved with the parlor process, with the brain trust process, how we get to corporate clients, how we can build our own solutions to these cultural problems that are happening. So it's a very intentional systems that are happening on different platforms. The Substack is more of a newsletter format. Instagram is definitely more for video format. And then, of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel at BeMo Brown, where we put all of these things together to make sure that we have broadcast journalist level of content sharing that we're doing on that platform. So that's how you can find us. DM me if you have any questions. I'm very open to having conversations with individuals as long as we're trying to get to the right path. Now, if you're coming in and you want to pick a fight, we might fight, but then you're going to be up out of here. So unless we're
Yeah,
together, we can build together, and let's definitely do that.
respect, man. Like I said, man, I really appreciate this conversation. It was good to build with you. And I know this won't be the last time or the last thing that we do together. So that's exciting for me. So
Yeah,
thank
man.
you for your time, man.
Man, I thank you for having me. I appreciate the Afro and Audio platform, especially the conference, especially in light of the conversation that we have. Having space, holding space is a very hard task. And then to then share that space with other people is a responsibility that I love and I know that you love. So I appreciate you for having me. I appreciate Afros and Audio and thank you for your time, man.
Thank you, man.